पाकिस्तानी है, हम पाकिस्तानी है।
Welcome back. Before going to the break, we were talking about importance of Kashmir Solidarity Day. And then we started taking questions. We are going to resume that, but there is a change in our panel. As I told you, Fakhr Imam Sahab had to leave, and he told you why he had to leave. We are joined by Dr. Syed Waqar Ali, who is Head of Department for Governance and Public Policy, the department where we are sitting right now. And not only that, he is an expert on Kashmir matters as well. Thank you very much, Dr. Saab, for being part of the program. I'm going to come back to you, sir, but before that, before we left for the break, there was a question regarding Kashmir, LOC, and other matters. Zamir Akram Saab wants to respond to that. So please go ahead.
I also want to take this opportunity to clarify both aspects of the question. The first aspect was relating to why cannot the LOC be a solution to the problem. Actually, this is a solution that in some ways India has offered for some time. The problem with that is that it will divide the people of Kashmir along the LOC, which is an artificial line because it was originally the ceasefire line where the 1948 conflict between India and Pakistan ended. This is not acceptable to the people of Kashmir. That is the bottom line. And the UN Security Council resolutions do not call for the division of Kashmir. They call for the people of Kashmir to make their choice whether they want to belong to India or Pakistan as a whole, the whole of the state of Jammu and Kashmir. So there is no question of envisaging any division. The essence of the UN resolutions is self-determination by the people of Kashmir. And India, Pakistan, or the international community does not have the right to arbitrarily decide what the people of Kashmir want. So this is not only a legal point, it is a political point, and it is also a moral issue which I need to clarify to everyone in this regard. The second is regarding why do we raise Kashmir where we do not raise what is happening to the Uyghurs in China. Okay, first of all, we raise Kashmir because Kashmir is very much a part of Pakistan. That is why we raise Kashmir. The second part is that you need to be very clear of what is happening in Xinjiang. Do not be persuaded by Western media sources. You have a library, I'm sure your library has back issues of the New York Times or Washington Post or any of these Western newspapers. Please go ahead and look at the back issues for just a month, if not more. And you will see virtually every issue on a daily basis has an article against China. How many do you now know what is happening in China or particularly in Xinjiang? For the last 10 years, from the wide open spaces of ungoverned Afghanistan, where the US has a military presence, Afghan territory has been used to promote Uyghur terrorism in China. Now, I'm sure you did not know that because that does not come out in the New York Times. So please, understand what is happening in China and understand why it is happening. Because China is a rising challenge to American global hegemony, American global supremacy, the Americans are trying every possible effort to undermine China from its economy, from its internal security, from its military capabilities. That is why this exposure is being given to what is happening to the Ugis.
Right.
I have been to Xinjiang several times, and I have not seen any example or any clear occasion where the people are being mistreated.
Right.
And you cannot compare what is happening in Xinjiang to what is happening in India, or what is happening
Especially
in
in
Myanmar,
Kashmir.
or what is happening in Palestine against the Palestinians.
Right.
There's no comparison.
Okay, absolutely, sir. Let me ask Dr. Bakar also to give his opening statement, and then we are going to go back to the audience.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would say this itself, the demonstration of observing the 5th of February with the Kashmiri people is, I guess, it's a commitment of the nation of Pakistan to the very fundamental political rights of the people of Jammu and Kashmir.
Right.
And I guess post 5th of August, we have seen across the society, when we see people from all walks of the life, particularly from Pakistan, diaspora, all have demonstrated their commitment and will to the fundamental political cause of Kashmiri people. And I guess this is guaranteed internationally through international organizations, United Nations Security Council resolutions. We have seen this happening in past. Within 6 months, we have seen twice it has been debated or discussed to some level. This is very welcoming. We also need to understand the nuances of this conflict within the Jammu and Kashmir, the society in particular, and those who are living in AJK, they have the more responsibility of understanding it, that the particular this resistance things we have seen over the period of time. Kashmiris have mastered the art of resistance through different levels. We have been seeing and witnessing that. We have seen the human rights reports in past, very tragic. We have seen that even they've recommended some actions against their military personnel who have been committing human rights violation. We have seen the cases of half widows. Now what happened now was, I mean, some of them are saying there are different commentaries about post 5th of August, how Indian state behaved. But once we need to understand that the entire thing was very much structured and planned.
Right.
We have seen within 2 months, Kashmir Chamber of Commerce and Industries have issued a statement that it's what economic loss of was $2.5 billion.
Right.
Now it could have been more and must be more.
And then we see snowballing right now.
So we've seen the health sector, we've seen the education sector impacting.
Right.
So what was the entire plan of BJP actually? That since they have a strong institutional memory when it comes to Kashmiri resistance,
Right.
so they are trying to
Institutional memory or malice?
yeah, both. Yeah. Yes. So in that direction to curb the resistance actually. So what was their plan is to that you have to attack the society into different dimensions to crush the resistance. But what we have seen is people have self-imposed curfew to demonstrate one thing. They are not sending their children to schools. There is no environment when you have military people in every nook and corner. So idea is over the period of time we have seen that Indian state, particularly BJP government, were unable to counter this resistance. Now what is the fundamental responsibility people living here is to offer them the platform to the Kashmiris to tell to the world that this is a long pending issue and the world must intervene. It has broader security concern issues linked with South Asian peace and stability. And you see one thing, BJP had this thing in cards. Now we have seen that they are trying to systematically change the narrative of society. When say Kashmiri, what we want, hum kya chahte azadi, what they have done in mainstream in India, they say hum kya chahte azadi. There is always a mainstreaming of Kashmiri naras and slogans within India that we need to understand as well. They're also trying to target the Kashmiri language, try to change this manuscript, which is again, to target the culture and identity. So these all aspects Kashmiri society is resisting, and what this 5th of February shows is that the nation entire is standing with them fundamentally because of their political rights. Right. So that's something very encouraging.
That's very important. Thank you very much, Dr. Saab, for that introduction. Now let us go back to the audience. Kindly raise your hands. Ask your questions, identify the answer, who is going to answer. You have the mic, please, go ahead.
My question is from Lieutenant General Talat Masood, that what is your perspective on using social media as a tool for liberating Kashmiris?
I think social media is a very important medium, and I think it is one of the most important medium to influence the young people particularly. So I think it should be used, and it should be used very constructively, because it could also be misused by our opponents, and the Indians have been doing that. So I think it's very important to use it very intelligently to see that, you know, the real message goes to the people of Kashmir and to the world, and also to try to highlight what is happening in Kashmir in a very subtle way. So I think you have raised a very important question. I think social media should be used, and it is for the young people of Pakistan, it is for you people to use the social media in order to sort of send a very strong message to the world that you know, the Indian atrocities are unacceptable, and they are destroying all the you know, the human values that the world should cherish.
Right. Thank you very much, General Saab. I'm glad you asked that question. Usually an anchor is not supposed to chip in and give his own opinion, but this is something which is very close to my heart. And I tell you, social media actually does give you something very interesting. And that is, remember that book that was written, The World is Flat? It literally has made the world flat. The world's leaders are sitting on Twitter, Facebook, elsewhere. If you want to tag them, you can do it. You can add a picture. And I'm sure so many young people here, everybody has a mobile, and they have the technology. And now, thanks to social media, we all have a voice. So we can always communicate to the world and convey to them the plight of Kashmiri people. Narrative has to be the same, and it has to be about human rights and the UN's promises. Let us go back to the audience where you have the mic. Please stand up, identify yourself, and then ask your question. Please go ahead.
As we all know about the atrocities being committed by Indian fascist government and demographic changes which are under process, how far Pakistan has gone in taking influential steps to curb Indian brutal agendas, and how much assistance Pakistan has provided to its Kashmiri brothers?
Well, even before the Indian action of August 5th, Pakistan has been involved in raising the Kashmir issue in various relevant international forums, such as the UN General Assembly and the UN's Human Rights Council, European Parliament, European Union, etc. After what was done by the Indian government, international attention has been diverted or focused on Kashmir in a much more comprehensive way, and we have seen the international community seized of this issue in a much greater level than it was ever before. So this is a tremendous opportunity that Pakistan has to internationalize the Kashmir issue in a very effective way, and our effort from now on must be to keep it on the front burner. As a result of these efforts, we have seen the kind of international reaction, both by governments, by civil society, by parliamentarians, by the media, by academics, and this is something that we need to keep doing. Very important, we have heard before these two reports that have come from the Human Rights Council's officials by the High Commissioner for Human Rights. Our intention should be to keep that momentum going, to keep the Human Rights Council and the High Commissioner seized of it. In a few days, you may already know, the UN Secretary General will be in Pakistan, which will be another opportunity for us to expose him to what is happening in Kashmir. He has already issued several statements regarding this issue. So the purpose of the diplomatic effort of the government of Pakistan, in fact, all of us, the people of Pakistan, should be to highlight this issue as broadly and as consistently as possible internationally.
Right. Thank you very much, sir. Now I'll ask Vani Saab to actually come in here. But Vani Saab, I want to add something here as well. She was talking about demographic shifts, and it seems that was the purpose of scuttling 35A. But now there are reports that Indian cinema Bollywood is being asked to produce films on the victimhood of Kashmiri Pandits, through which they are going to incite the emotions of the Hindu population of India. And then, of course, the plan is to unleash the power of RSS in Kashmir, through which they want to bring about a demographic change and then bring in the settlers. How can we stop that if that is the case?
You see, this is not for the first time they are trying such things. If you go past, if you go to the history in 1947 massacre in Jammu, which took place of Kashmiri Muslims, it was also that some of the people who migrated from this part of the world to that part, and they narrated the stories that we were brutalized in Attack and many other places, and they told those stories, and that instigated what happened in the November 1947 in Jammu. This is the same case when the Jagmohan orchestrated that the exodus of Kashmiri Pandits from the valley in 90s. And on the first day, when the Pandits left from Kashmir, on second day, you had the Gau Kadal massacre, when the documented cases are 53 people, while as people say 210 people died in that incident. When that was the first instance when Indian Army shoot at the people brutally without indiscriminate fire, and people jumped into the river, and there is no evidence why the 210 people have gone. Yeah. So that's one of the cases. And then the people were out, all the Hindus were out from Kashmir, and the Indian Army had a very clean ground to make ethnic cleansing of Muslims in each and every village. They will cordon the village, they will get the people out, they humiliated women, those stories you all know. Yeah. And after that, what I have been telling to the youngest people in Pakistan, that we have the four forced migrations from Indian-occupied Kashmir to Pakistan and Azad Kashmir. Right. But when you go to Google, you won't see anything written on that. You won't see anything on that, how the people of Kashmir were forced to migrate, right. What happened to them. You don't have that in the archives of the history. But you have the only one exodus of Kashmiri Pandits from, that is always...
Just to state your principled position, what is the position of APHC on Kashmiri Pandit? Are they welcome to come back and settle?
Yeah, Kashmiri Pandits, we have, the APHC has always said, and every Kashmiri leader, every Kashmiri Muslim, those Pandits who live in Kashmir, they are there, Kashmiri are holding their burials and all that. Right. APHC wants Kashmiri Pandits, they are the state subjects, they should come back, they should live in their homes where they were, but we don't want the separate settlements for them, we don't want them as settlers there, we want them as inhabitants where they were living, they should live there.
There shouldn't be an apartheid there.
There should not be apartheid there. That's what the BJP and RSS is trying to create.
Right, they are, but of course there is one argument that thanks to the government of Pakistan, the focus has been kept on Kashmir, international focus, and that's why India has not been able to bring about these demographic changes. Let us go back to the audience.
My question is with General Talat Sahab. Sir, we have been knocking on the doors of United Nations Security Council for decades now, and we know that the much talked resolution about Kashmir is actually non-binding in nature. So India will linger on this issue for years and years to come. Don't you think that instead of going back to the United Security Council, we should be looking towards, bilateral relationships with countries, economically and trade-wise, in order to actually put pressure on India to come to this table to talk about this issue. So bilaterally, don't you think that this is more viable option as compared to United Nations Security Council?
In brief, sir, if the entire world is abandoning the UN, perhaps it is time for Pakistan to also do that. Please, your comment on this.
Well, I don't think we should ignore the United Nations Security Council. We should continue to use them, but you have a very important point. The fact is that, as we have been talking even today, that the other, the major powers, for their own, they want to promote their own interests. And their own interests are both strategic and economic and business interests. So they dominate while dealing with these countries, while dealing with India. So they are not interested in sort of really pursuing, apart from China, who is of course a strategic partner of ours and has been the only country in the UN Security Council which has been raising the Kashmir issue after the 65 thing. Now, what I would like to say that apart from that, I would also say that what you have suggested, we should also continue sort of promoting Kashmir in other forums, in other areas. And also try to, when the internal situation and the domestic situation of Pakistan will improve, obviously it will have a much greater international weight and voice in the annals of the world. But at the same time, if we remain weak, if we are economically dependent on other countries as we are today, then obviously you will find that not many countries, even Muslim countries, will not raise their voice for Kashmir and for the Pakistani position, as we had witnessed even recently. So it is a very important point that you raised, that it is so, I mean, it is imperative that Pakistan, should really look inwards. And that is why there has been an argument in Pakistan that, Pakistan is too much engaged externally and it does not give that much of importance to sort of building its own strength internally. And the internal strength comes when we are not dependent economically on others. We don't have a self-sufficient economy. We are not politically as strong and democratic as we should be. The more democratic we are, the more economically strong we are, we would see that our voice would be heard and will have a lot more weight than what it has today.
If we are economically dependent, so we remain unheard?
Right. That's a very good question,
Or
and who
is it-
should answer?
And is it that Kashmir would stay the way it is?
Here's the thing. Pakistan didn't invent democracy. Pakistan didn't invent UN. Pakistan didn't invent the idea of human rights. And with due respect, these are the countries, the Western countries, the UN, GA, and UNSC. The ideas came from there. And if they don't adhere to their own value system, it is a sad commentary on them. And you're right. Regardless of soft power of a country, we have to actually focus on human rights and what is going on in Kashmir. Next question, please.
My question from Sir Zamir is that we all know these talks, all talk shows, all channels are talking, everyone will celebrate Solidarity Day. But how all these talks will help the people of Jammu and Kashmir who are under Indian brutality for more than 200 days? We know we are, every year we celebrate 5 Feb, but when will it end? And anyone can give any date, any prediction that when that curfew will end? We are all here, I am also a Kashmiri, we all celebrate, but I am in Pakistan, so I have no problem here. I am happy, but those are in so much problems that we don't, many of the youth had no idea from which type of difficulties they are going through.
Thank you very much for your question. And this is important because she spoke like a true young person, right? Especially a Kashmiri as well. And we can understand the sentiment. Let us actually take these two questions to you, sir.
So let me answer the second question first, because, well, quite frankly, I agree. I share your frustration in this context, because we, yes, we observe this day. We talk on the television, on the radio, in international forums, etc., etc. And how useful is that? So we need to understand some, accept certain basic realities. The first reality is that this is going to be a long haul. This is not going to end anytime soon. There is no quick fix, unfortunately, okay? Because we are dealing with a country, and particularly a country whose leaders today are totally unreasonable. They are not only unreasonable, they are fascists, and they are murderers and thugs. Mr. Modi and Mr. Amit Shah have already demonstrated what they are capable of doing in Gujarat when they killed 2,000 Muslims, slaughtered them. So they are quite capable of doing this, and talking reason with them is not going to have any impact at all. What we need or what we can do, we should keep the, as I said before, keep the international pressure on India so that the Indian people themselves come to this conclusion that this situation cannot be sustained anymore, and that leadership emerges in India which is looking at a solution. Now this pressure, in my view, and I'm saying this in my personal, strictly personal view, this is not government policy. I mean, the government policy is to keep the Indians under pressure. But what I'm saying is that this pressure that I believe should be exerted is not just political pressure or moral pressure or legal pressure. All of these kind of pressures need to be exerted. We need to use every opportunity to do that. But we also must find ways to help the people of Kashmir to be able to fight back, because that kind of pressure is also important. The reason why, as I mentioned earlier, the curfew has not been lifted, the lockdown has not been removed, is because despite the fact that there are 900,000 Indian soldiers in this small region, the Indian state is afraid of those few young Kashmiris who will rise up as soon as this lockdown is removed. And as Wani Saab said, the alienation in Kashmir today is complete and total. So that is the reason why this lockdown. So I am confident that, but it will take time. It is not going to happen anytime soon. As I said, there's going to be a long haul before this comes to pass. But at the end of the day, India will have to be made to pay a higher price for its occupation in Kashmir. As far as the other question is concerned, you asked me to address that about, yes, I agree with you. At the heart of any policy, at the heart of any government or any activity that you want to do, there is a price tag. If you don't have the money, you can't do it. So for us, for instance, let me give you a very clear example. When we say, yes, we need to have a more proactive diplomacy internationally, we need to empower our embassies around the world, give them the capabilities, give them the funds to be able to do that. Now, in view of our existing economic difficulties, it's not possible to do that. So this is one aspect. The other aspect which was asked earlier on, should we have better bilateral relations or stronger bilateral relations in order to pressurize the Indians? Yes, of course. Again, if our economy was doing better, we would have better economic relations with different parts of the world. Our economic relations would enhance their willingness to be helpful to us. I mean, what has the big card that India has played so far has been the economic card. India buys $500 billion worth of missiles from Russia. Those $500 billion make the Russians listen to the Indians. Same with the French. Same with other countries, including the United States. Because the business community then steps in and says, you can't go around criticizing the Indians because we have so many billions of dollars of trade with these people. So economic clout is very important. We need to develop that economic clout. Unfortunately, as of now, our economy has been in bad shape, it's still in bad shape. Inshallah, we will come out of it at some point.
Right. Very quickly, Dr. Saab, you want to come in here?
just one question that I want to just once again put into this question thing, that this discourse in Pakistan, particularly about Indian economy
Right.
and their influence
Yeah.
vis-a-vis Kashmir,
Right.
I guess we need to deconstruct this as well.
Yeah.
Because it has different dimensions to it. I mean, India was never too strong all the time. I mean, in 80s, 90s, we have to see that. Somewhere we were doing better as well in past. So we also need to see inward what could have been better, how the narratives that we shaped regarding Kashmir could have been more acceptable, more inclusive in that context. So, I mean, same IMF is issuing statements on India right now that it can create a problem for the entire global economy and all these things.
Yeah.
So within academia,
Congratulations, India, you're going to drag the entire world down.
so yeah, within academia also, I guess we need to do a serious thinking of this, because many economically well-off countries, I mean, international institutions have targeted them. So we have to see that are we putting our narrative very much right and straight.
Yeah, and narrative is important, it is one thing. But the second thing that I have to, the young people who were speaking, I have to tell you one thing. You see, when we were taught international relations, we were taught about various theories, and that this school of thought is called realism. This is called idealism, right? It seems that all the mature, experienced people believe in the world of realism. But that doesn't mean that you have to stop dreaming, right? There is value of human rights elsewhere too. I mean, if the young people, we start telling young people that you cannot do anything with the exception of just bringing the entire country to this level of power, your energies will be sapped. So, please don't stop dreaming. The world was built by better people, people with ideas and dreams. So things can improve because we all believe in human rights. Next question.
Sir, my question is that if India is violating the international rules, why the international organization do not take any steps against India? Are the international rules are only for us? Are they support India?
You see, okay, let me talk first in the context specifically of Kashmir. In the United Nations, when the Kashmir issue was raised by Mr. Nehru, it was not under the relevant chapter of the UN Security Council, which is chapter 7, which deals with force, with the use of force by the UN to implement its decisions. So, the legal basis for the use of force or enforcement of the UN's decision in this regard, the UNCEP resolutions on Kashmir, is not there, number one. Number two, international organizations like the United Nations do not have an enforcement machinery of their own. It is only through the actions of the member states, particularly the permanent 5 members of the Security Council, that the United Nations can ask other countries to provide its troops for some kind of military action or using their forces, mostly nowadays not for military action but for humanitarian action. As you know, Pakistan is one of the countries that contributes forces for humanitarian action around the world. So it is the member states that decide when the UN can intervene militarily. And in this case of Kashmir, of course, the first point that I mentioned, the second point is that historically the UN's involvement was vetoed, used to be vetoed by the then Soviet Union. If a situation arises now in the Security Council, my feeling is that it will again be vetoed, perhaps this time by the United States. So that's not really an option that we can enforce the decisions of the Security Council or the United Nations, because there is no other, no military option. But what we can do is to continue to highlight the responsibility of the United Nations
And build
to
pressure.
take action
And build pressure.
pressure
Right.
so that eventually the Indians, but it is not the only pressure. You have to build combined pressure from different angles, as I mentioned in
Within every
response.
country as well through advocacy, right, sir?
Advocacy, economic, everything needs to be put together so that this impacts on the...
Absolutely.
Sir, Zamir has talked about, and Sabani has talked about the demographic changes that can and are pursuing after the Article 35A. And you have also talked about the Jammu massacres, right? So can we not mobilize as academicians and our student body to know the facts for sure? Right. And for example, as Fakhr Imam Sahib rightly pointed out, Alistair Lamb is one of the authority. And he had talked about very categorically about Gilgit-Baltistan area, which threw away all vestiges of Dogra rule and voted for Pakistan. But that is never brought into any narrative. Right. Whereas India, on the other hand, is bringing all the Pandit narrative and all those narratives.
But their method is emotive method. And
yeah, that's what I'm saying. That the
but you are arguing for a rational argument about it. Is it not what you are saying?
No.
Because
I'm talking about that
Lamb.
if the student body knows the facts, right, they're not going to be apologetic regarding the Gilgit-Baltistan area when it is being dragged into this equation, right, which is simply not right.
Right, and that's a very good question, and we have to actually start closing the discussion with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it the conclusive question where everybody can also add their concluding arguments as well. General sir, let us start with you, sir. Do you want to answer that question?
Well, I think she has a point, but I think let me sort of go beyond this point, what she has raised. Right. I think, let us look at this Kashmir problem in two dimensions. One is the Kashmiri struggle itself, right, as to what extent they have the stamina and the motivation to continue with their struggle of freedom. I think that is extremely important. I know the type of hardships that they're undergoing, but at the same time, I think they are making sacrifices. We are aware of those. It has to continue. At the same time, I think Pakistan should relentlessly sort of support the Kashmir struggle. And for that, it should use all avenues possible. Obviously, there are limitations, but at the same time, I would say that there are great possibilities as well. Today, we have discussed several avenues through which Pakistan and the Kashmiri diaspora and the people of Pakistan and the media can continue to sort of promote the cause of Kashmir. I think it is this motivation should also be within Pakistan to promote the cause of Kashmir. Right. Because it is not just Kashmir alone that is affected. It is entirely the attitude of India towards Pakistan, towards the world, towards the Muslims is involved. So I think we need to expose that.
All right, absolutely. Zamir Akram, sir, your
yes,
2 cents.
I totally agree that we have not focused, especially in our educational institution, in our curricula. I mean, I remember when I was a student, we had a compulsory subject called Pakistan Studies, which talked about the emergence of Pakistan, etc., which is all very good and it's very useful. But I think we, in either doing Pakistan, in the curriculum on Pakistan Studies or on its own, we need to have a greater focus on the Kashmir issue for a better understanding of what it means, how it emerged, what were the realities. I mean, not in this forum, but in one or two other forums, grown up, I mean, not students, but but people who have been in responsible positions have asked certain questions which reflected that they were not fully aware of what the UN Security Council resolutions actually call for. I mean, once someone asked me that why did the UN Security Council resolutions called for Pakistan to withdraw its troops from Kashmir, and that is why the Indians got a basis for not implementing the resolutions. And he was a very senior journalist. And I said, look, you look at the reality, the UN Security Council's resolutions ask for both sides to withdraw their troops, not just one. And secondly, there were no Pakistani troops. These were khasadars and volunteers and people from Gilgit-Baltistan. They were not Pakistan Army.
Right.
So, these realities are not known, and these realities need to be made aware to people.
But there is a very critical point here. Most of this information is available on internet, somewhere in our books, elsewhere. It is not merely about developing a narrative. It is also about the thirst for knowledge. If I'm not going to open a book, I'm not going to learn about history, right? Let me take the same question to Dr. Waqar and also request him to make it the concluding remark from his side as well.
Okay. Please. So I must say the struggle of Kashmiri people is the struggle against the occupation. And we have seen that they have been continuing doing it. A person who comes from Kashmir, I believe that the struggle will continue. The recent action of Indian government has left no space for Kashmiris to engage unless international bodies, organizations intervene. The manifestation, it could assume different forms that have been assuming Kashmiri resistance. But I must say to this audience that there are many unheard stories and untold stories and incidents as well when it comes to Kashmir. I guess this is one of the case studies of non-violent resistance, the way Kashmiris transformed themselves. I guess this is the duty of international organizations, those who believe in a democratic ethos and value system, that they should look towards people of Jammu and Kashmir. This also is a test case for international organizations like United Nations, Security Council, that fundamental political rights of Kashmiri people have to be met. They have to be given this bulletin. Yeah.
Right now, they're compromised.
Exactly. So I guess this is a great test case. And I must say that people of Pakistan, those who are standing with the Kashmiris in solidarity, it's a great welcoming step for the people of Jammu and Kashmir.
Right. Vani Saab, your comment. Also, let me add one little bit of question here. Since she was talking about narrative building, there's also this, exposition also of memories. Do we have the kind of data to actually qualify how many people have died, their lives? Can we at least create some museums in their memories so that foreigners who visit Pakistan or Kashmir can actually see for themselves some kind of depiction of what is going on in Indian occupied Kashmir, sir?
You see, first of all, let me say the people of Kashmir are putting up a heroic struggle against the Indian occupation, and that will continue, I assure you. Whatever the manifestation will be, but that will continue, and there is no way of compromising or negotiating or doing any business with India. So that's one part of it. The second part is that we always blame the international organizations, other things, that they are not doing. The international human rights organizations should this and do and that. Right. But at least we have to look at ourselves. How are we ourselves reading about Kashmir? Are we ourselves putting that information across the globe? Have we documented those reports? Have we seen, as Dr. Vikas was saying, this told and untold stories? You have lots of stories at the line of control, not to go to the other side of the border. You have the stories on the line of control where India used snipers to kill the people. That is a war crime. So you could have done stories on that, and that information should be with the international organizations so they can make a case on that, or the government can make a case on that. Always we say that government should do this, and government has not done this, and international community should do this, but we forget our duties. As I said, as Batafi said, that is there any record? I tell you, Kashmiri civil society has documented each and every incidence of violence which has been perpetrated by Indian forces in Kashmir.
Right.
You can see the alleged perpetrators was one of the reports, which we are going now, some of our friends will take that to the ICC, that becomes the case that, 531 Indian officers from the rank of, soldier to the rank of lieutenant general, they have been named in that, they were involved in such cases. Similarly, we have another report, structures of violence, and periodical reports. Every year we have the reports in which each and every incidence of human rights is documented, and the name of the person involved in that rights violation, and also the stories animating from this. So that everything is available. But I will say to the younger generation of Pakistan, you read those reports, you go and Google those reports, and then put your viewpoint on that. Don't only see on Google what the Indian narrative is, what they are selling.
Absolutely, Wani sir, thank you very much for that answer. The reason I asked you, sir, was that we, as journalists, we were often taught that if you want to appeal to anybody's imagination, show, don't tell, right? So perhaps instead of just building narratives, if we have more physical, depiction of what is going on, that might be able to jog the memory of the world community and keep our memories safe as well. But sir, I'm told that we have to conclude the program here. Altaf Hussain Wani Sahab, thank you very much for your kind contribution and your time. It was great a pleasure to have you in the program. Dr. Syed Waqas Ali, thank you very much, sir, for your time as well. Ambassador Zamir Akram Sahab, thank you very much for your contribution. It was really valuable. Thank you very much, sir. Gerald Sahab, I keep on calling you my North Star. So your contribution was of great import as well. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Let us also thank the audience. You have been a great audience. Let us put our hands together to actually so this was a tribute to all the audience and the panelists also, and this is also a tribute to our Kashmiri brothers, sisters who are struggling even as we speak. One aspect is clear. When you talk about the situation in Kashmir, it is getting worse and worse every minute. And everybody has to know about it. It is our responsibility as human beings. It is part of basic human decency to know where human rights are being violated. But this is happening so close to, the civilizational fault lines or the places where it is thought that a democracy sits. But now that the rulers of democracy are also making a mockery of its constitution and democracy. I'm talking about India. What is going on in India today, we didn't want to debate that for that long. But one thing is for sure. If you want to highlight the plight of Kashmiris, all you have to do is tell the truth and appeal to the basic human decency of the world, of the people who believe in these core values. If that happens, I am sure that we will be able to move mountains if we have to. This was today's program. Thank you very much for watching. Take care.
Vai,